I also want to thank all of the hardworking staff, as well as the performers and all of the composers that have been a part of this festival so far. Yesterday's first concert went very well, very pleased, and I think it was very well received with our guest ensemble, Quarteto Obrigado. We have 3 more events. If you're not familiar with the other stuff that's going to be happening, we have one tomorrow afternoon at Tulane University, and then our final concert is on Saturday evening at the Domino Lounge. There is a program for the concert that, as we get closer to it, that you'll see on the TV screen up where Kevin is currently manning the front table. And additionally, we are also running a matching fundraiser, so if you want to help contribute and support these kind of events and the lovely performers that are a part of the Versatile New Music organization, then I encourage you to support and donate to us. Without further ado, I wanted to be able to do this pre-concert talk to have various representatives from different areas of Louisiana that have some sort of conversation and have agency towards cultivating a new music community. I want to give them the opportunity to introduce themselves and then ask them a few questions. Towards the very end of this talk, then I also want to give the opportunity for any questions from the audience as well. So I'll just start immediately to my left, to your right, and introduce yourself to them.
Hi. I'm Philip Schusler. I'm an assistant artistic director of Versatile New Music and conductor as well.
Hi, my name is Jeremy Edwards, and I am a composer here for the festival, and I'm from Lake Charles, Louisiana.
Hello, I am Mel Mobley. I am from Monroe, Louisiana, and I am a founder and director of the New Music on the Bayou Festival up in Monroe.
Awesome. I just wanted to get started with a basic question about yourselves as individuals and what got you into new music in the first place. How did you get introduced to new music, and what made you want to become a composer and get into this world in the first place? And we'll go in reverse order. We'll actually put Mel on the spot and have Mel go first.
Okay, I'm going to take it from maybe just the new music angle, not the composition angle. I do remember very specifically when I was a freshman in college, and I was in percussion ensemble, and it was, I think, my first semester, and for some reason I was playing on one of the hardest pieces with all the upperclassmen, and we were rehearsing, and I think it was a piece by William Kraft called Momentum, and I just remember looking around, and we were playing all these fivelets, quintuplets, and septuplets, and on break drums and everything, and everybody was just like really into it and really focused, and I really felt like this is what I needed to be doing. This is like where I belong. Like it all made so much sense to me. So that was it.
Very cool. When I went to, I did my undergrad in music education, and then quickly did my master's in music theory and composition, and then that's where I kind of stumbled upon the new music world. And then in my studies during my graduate program, my PhD at LSU, I really had a lot of opportunities and really fell in love with just creating music and crafting music, and it was nice to kind of find this passion and a community of people that kind of thought like me and produced this type of music. So it was a lot of fun to kind of stumble upon, and I'm just here for the ride.
Well, like many composers, I'm essentially a failed rock star. I wanted to be a rock star when I was in high school and be in a rock band and tour and sell merchandise and do that route, but that didn't work out for me. But it turned out that over the years, as I pursued my interest in rock music and folk music, that I discovered that I had unusual interests, and that most of the music that I was most attracted to was music that initially confused me in a good way, music that made my head swirl and made me want to learn more about it instead of rejecting it outright and having a knee-jerk reaction of, oh, that's something I don't understand, so I want to turn away from it. I was drawn towards that sort of music, and almost naturally that led into my interest in pursuing composition a little bit later in the latter stages of my undergraduate studies, was when I first discovered that you could actually get a degree in confusing music. So I kind of took on that mantle and pursued that. So I found scores, just poured over scores by Hans Werner Henze and Pierre Boulez and all of these weird notational things. I heard the sorts of things that you were talking about, Mel, these weird tuplets, and it just struck my curiosity, and it still does today. I mean, there's still so much music after all these years of been studying it and practicing it and conducting it and composing it. Still so much music out there that I don't understand, and it confuses me in the best of ways. So that's where I am now.
That's amazing. I'd say that some of my experience is very similar to that. Like I started off as a music education major, and I was also failing at it. Like I started to get into this burnout phase where around my junior year, I just was really questioning the pathway that I was going, because I saw a lot of politicking around K through 12 education and my role in it, and especially with the way that my education was. After Theory 4, they started teaching methods classes for music education in your junior year. So all of a sudden, all my music education after that was going to be about basic kindergarten, like K through 4, like Suzuki violin method and all that. And I started to really have this existential crisis about whether I wanted to be a part of that or not. And one of the requirements of my undergraduate degree was for any music education major, they were required to go to 8 recitals per semester. And 2 of them were of our, like 2 had to be like large ensemble, 2 had to be chamber ensemble, like whatever, but 2 were also wild cards. So in my junior year, I ended up going to a new music concert off of a whim because it just seemed interesting, and the music there just completely flipped a switch for me and just became this ignited this spark and this passion for something that I didn't even know existed. I knew existed a little bit from some weird friends I had in high school that also listened to some of this stuff, but I didn't really get proper exposure until that junior year, and it really changed the trajectory of my life. Which is one of the reasons why this kind of thing is so important to me, because I want to be able to pay that forward and allow other people, give other people that same sort of access and exposure in the same way that we all have that put us down this path in the first place. I chose the 3 of you here specifically because you come from specific different regions of Louisiana and are cultivating your own kind of new music community through whatever avenues that you have, either through university or through New Music on the Bayou, deeply into the community. And I just wanted to ask you, as a new music cultivator in your area, what's the most important takeaway that you want your community of audience, performers, composers to really take away when you're putting on the band? Or what do you want your audience to understand? I'll put it to Phil first. We'll do a little bit of a daisy chain here.
Well, I mean, I've always been a proponent of an open, welcome environment for new music. There's usually been a stigma attached to new music that it lies behind the academic ivory walls of academia, or that it's an impenetrable thing because I don't understand it. I mean, if people say they don't appreciate Mozart because they don't understand it, then where does that leave us as contemporary musicians? So we, in Versability Music in the 11 years up to this point, and other sorts of endeavors, we've always invited, wanted to have a welcoming environment, and that's easier said than done. There's only so much you can do as an organizer of these sorts of communities. You want the audience to meet you somewhere halfway, but that's sort of one of our goals, our visions is to have these sorts of communal experiences where we feel like that we're in a community together, that we're trying to work together to build a community, and that there's not a wall there between the performers and musicians and composers and the audience, and that we want them to ask questions. We want to know more about them and build an audience sort of in a grassroots way.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeremy?
So, on my side of the state, around Lake Charles, Louisiana, there isn't a new music organization yet. I would like to, in the near future, follow both of your footsteps and, create something on that side of the state. And maybe we have this triangle thing happening. And, I want to say thank you both for creating these opportunities for composers, both, with the New Music on the Bayou and here. And it's welcoming and encouraging to see so many opportunities in the state of Louisiana with new music. And as far as from my perspective, where I mostly, write new pieces specifically for either ensembles that the university level or having a lot of friends in the area that are just interested in performing their pieces. My take would be to have, like you said, the audience just be open to new ideas, open to new concepts, and just come and have an experience outside of just maybe going to the movies or going to things that you're regularly used to. So just open to experiencing new things and ask questions and just kind of be in the moment. I feel like a lot of us are stuck to our phones for a little bit, and just coming out to a new concert might just give you a little break away from technology for a second, even though we might be using technology, but just to kind of breathe and just kind of be in the moment.
Sure. Can I, before we go over to Mel, can I just ask as a follow-up there, just because you don't have a new music community yet in the same way that we've tried to cultivate in other kind of places, do you have, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but do you have ideas about exactly where you think you can start that sort of thing, or how you can try to cultivate that from scratch?
Oh, definitely. The local arts council has a lot of grants and a lot of funding, and they recently they have a new arts director who's really pushing the envelope and creating new opportunities for our area of the state. And I'm excited to kind of work with her and see how this idea could be possible. There's also a lot of great venues in the area that are run by local musicians, so the venues are there, and I know the musicians are there as well, and obviously we can have people from all over come and participate. So I think there's a lot of really good opportunity, and so I just need to sit down and talk to, collect some information, and take it day by day.
Sure, absolutely. Mel, go ahead.
Well, I feel like I should have a really good answer at this point. I don't know that I do. I have many answers. I can have answers that I give when I'm trying to get money from people. I have the answers that I give when I'm in a bad mood. I have, so there's so many answers, but I know that we all, what we do is we're creating stuff, and we want to share that stuff. And we all know that that's what we want to have happen. And so on those good days, you see the 18 people there is almost 25 people, and some days you see those 18 people as that's like everybody was here was related to somebody except for 2 people. So I think it's a thing that we will constantly be striving to do, is to get people to see our music, because I think that's really the tragedy, is that they don't see it. Like I feel like what I have actually somewhat accomplished is maybe getting more people to know it's a thing and know kind of what it is when we say contemporary chamber music. They may not like it, they may not be all that interested, but they support it's happening. And so I think the more people you can get to understand it as a thing, then clearly the more people you are going to get that are into it. Because the people that end up being into it are really a random collection of people. Like, it is so bizarre. It might be a 7-year-old, it might be somebody in their 70s, it might be a 30-year-old who works on a farm. You just don't know. And so, again, what do I try to do is we try to get it in front of more people by attaching ourselves to groups that already have constituencies. And a lot of times we're successful with that, sometimes we're not, but that has been the most successful thing we do. Art, visual art venues are great, especially if they will get their constituency there, because their constituency, they aren't looking for an orchestra piece. You get the symphony league there, and they want to hear Mozart, but if you get those artists there, they don't care. So I think that when we can, search out a lot of varied audiences, that you're going to eventually get more people, and I think that's all we can do, is try to continue that element of it.
Sure. I was having a recent conversation with somebody on the Versatile New Music board. It wasn't that recent, but I guess it was like it was a thing about how you reach your audience and the kind of audience you're trying to reach. And she had a very good point in an overall strategy to say that the audience that we're trying to cultivate is not necessarily the music audience that's going to go to an LPO concert or that more traditional kind of stuff. The ones that you're going to cultivate are the ones that are just into avant-garde and experimental anything, whether it's experimental film or experimental visual art or stuff like that. Or experimental dance. So if you can cross-capture those kind of audiences, I'd say that one of the more successful versatile new music shows of recent was the one that we did collaborating with dance, because we were able to tap that dance community in addition to the music community that brings their own audience that's different, and that can help expose, like it helped expose me to what new dance, I was going to say new music dance, what like modern dance is all about, and the different various versions of that. And I think similarly, it exposes that dance community to the same thing on the other side. So I think that's pretty valuable. Can I say, just as knowing more about new music on the Bayou and some of the stuff, like is the community cultivation aspect of that, like is that strategic in trying to make sure, like how strategic and deliberate was it to integrate yourself so deeply into the various spaces between Monroe and all that, or was it just kind of a random thing to be able to say, we just need to find venues for places, and then like the audience happened to go to those? Like, can you speak a little bit about how that journey was, like from the beginning of new music on the Bayou to now?
Yeah, everything at the beginning was random, luck, happenstance, all of those words. We didn't know what we were doing. Absolutely did not. We were overwhelmed. We thought it would be some little tiny thing, and it exploded immediately. So what happened really, though, that I think jump-started our whole thing was we had one show that was scheduled during an art crawl at a really cool space. And we had envisioned, like, they said, yeah, because we said, there won't be a ton of people here, you know, so they said, yeah, you can set up a handful of chairs or whatever. So we did that. And then people kept streaming in, and then people were walking by, and they came in, and then people were looking at art, and they go, I want to sit down. And so it came, it's like there were like over 100 people there, and this is like our first one. Again, that was pretty random, and they loved it. Like I said, that was like an audience that was out looking for any kind of art, and this was new and interesting and excited, and all the composers that were there excited about it, so it just like was this energy. And I do think that events like this are great for that. There's energy here because people are, the pieces are exciting. The people who create them and the people who are playing them are all like really, you know, into it. And I think that generates a feeling that goes into the audience. And so, as to your question, after that, we very clearly learned, well, yeah, if we glom on to people that know people, then we'll get more people at our things. And so now it's become a thing of we have to like make sure we're hurting anybody's feelings, we have to get to the right places every now and then, and so forth. But we're continually seeking out new things. Like this last year, we had a space that I thought was going to be terrible, and it was great. It was the African American Heritage Museum. I thought the sound was going to be awful there. It was awesome. It was great. Yeah. So you never know.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to go back a little bit just from my own experience from something that Phil said too about the message and the idea about this being a welcoming community, and that there is this stigma around new music and sometimes just classical music in general as being something that is like higher class or elitist or something of that sort of nature. And that's definitely something that I think that the more you get to know new composers, like living composers today, that we want to break those walls down and say, we're not trying to be into this higher place, we're just trying to express the things that we want to be able to express, right? And I can just give like a small anecdotal example that when I was in my graduate school degree, I had gone through that turn of saying I was going to be a composition major because of that undergraduate concert. I was in my graduate composition degree, and I was in a 20th century music class that was required for music graduates. And a majority of the people in that class were music education majors, and there were a handful of composition majors that were in that class too. And the professor that was teaching that 20th century music class hated 20th century music, and basically was taking that requirement to just teach it because it was something that was a part of this thing. He was like the flute professor, but he didn't really care about 20th century music. And it became very clear the way that he approached, like saying, oh, like what is this, excuse me, but what is this John Cage shit? Like what is this stuff that happened like with 12th tone? Like he approached it with such disdain, and it was clear that the music education majors, graduate music education majors also treated with disdain. And so we, as the composers, were considered like the freaks and the outsiders, like within that class. And I remember thinking very clearly at the time, like these are graduate music education majors, right? Like if they are not going to be the advocates for the stuff that's going to be happening within their medium of teaching, whether it's high school or college, then what sort of chance do I have as a composer myself? And it felt very alienating. And that is what turned me into, I'm going to create new music scenes. Like that was the thing that lit my fire to say, I need to be the advocacy to show a different kind of message and to show that new music can be for everybody. And I think that the more that people that audience members and that even performers that are still trying to navigate their relationship with new music start to embrace that and understand that, no, we're not trying to be like this walled off thing, then the more you can create that connection and the more that the audience even can don't want to say tolerate, but can just be open to things that are outside of their normal experience. And I think that's ultimately what we're trying to achieve. And so, I'd say the other thing that I think is important and something distinct about like new music on the Bayou is asking for a call for scores from pretty much everywhere in the world and calls like a lot of people from the world to do that. And Batture Contemporary specifically is right now leaning on Louisiana specifically and trying to find an identity within Louisiana and potentially maybe expand a little bit into the Gulf South, but I think that that's something that's a very important part of what Batture Contemporary really is and what we want it to be in the future. So I just wanted to get opinions from others within other regions of Louisiana. Like, what place do you think that Louisiana new music or Gulf South regional new music has in the place of the national conversation and international conversation of new music? Because you think about the places that are seen as like the hip scenes for new music, and I think, oh, New York, I think like the Bowling Green New Music Festival, or I think about some stuff that's happening with New Music Chicago or like California. And sometimes I feel like the stuff that happens in Louisiana and in the area is a little bit dismissed or not really seen as like a valid place in some ways. So I just wanted to get a little bit of conversation about what the identity of new music specifically in this area has any meaning to you, if anything, and what that means in the context of the larger national picture. I know that's kind of a broad and vague kind of question, but you know, I'll open that up if there's thoughts about it.
I'll go ahead and talk first. Recently, I had very grateful to have several opportunities to attend different festivals within the last couple of years. Not only New Music on the Bayou, but I've been to the Texas New Music Festival a couple times, and I've been to the Mostly Modern Festival in upstate New York. I went to Alba New Music, or the Alba Festival in Italy last year. And from my perspective attending these festivals, there was some surprise from other participants saying like, oh, you're from Louisiana. Like, oh, you know, like they weren't, I guess, aware of the new music that Louisiana has to offer. But I would say we have a lot of culture and a lot of experiences that allow composers from Louisiana to have a very unique voice when it comes to creating new music. And I feel like the rest of the world is, you know, they don't really get to see that. And so having these festivals and cultivating Louisiana composers is really showing and, you know, allowing us to express these our voices as composers. I think it's a really unique perspective for sure.
I would agree with that. I mean, I certainly think that I spent some time during my years of study north and east, and I think there's just like the South, they consider the South, and there's a divider line somewhere, and anything below that's not that great. But I think there's a little bit of that. I think, you know, I've been here for a long time, so I can't like really speak to like what's exactly happening in other places, but my big sense is that I think Louisiana has become unique because we have what we have. Like a lot of composers doing a lot of work, a lot of variety, but all really of high quality. And I think that it's unique because it's not concentrated in one big state university or one big private university that gets all the students. We have it kind of interspersed, and we've created a community. We all know each other, you know. We're not meeting each other for the first time today, right? Because we are a community that kind of knows what's happening elsewhere. And I don't think that that's maybe is true, certainly in the states that have big high-end colleges that, you know, that compete with other high-end colleges, because all they care about at that point is the record of their students versus other students, or the record of their, you know. And we're always trying to create some music, and I think this festival could be really important for that. I do. I think that the idea of just like saying this is what Louisiana is, and growing that and growing its public face, you know, through streaming or whatever, I think it's important. I think it's significant.
I would add to this, I agree with everything that you're saying, that I feel like the past 15 or 20 years that small or large cities that aren't New York or Chicago have places like Pittsburgh, for instance, or Cincinnati, have been building sort of adjacent sorts of new music communities in various ways and degrees. So I think that there's becoming more of a breakout of contemporary music scenes in and around these sort of, I guess, second tier cities, for lack of a better term. But I agree. I feel like there is very often a stigma attached to southern cities in particular for various reasons, whether it's politics or cultural stigmas that are attached to that. But I can't speak to the entire state because I have limited experience. I've been to New Music on the Body quite a bit there, and I've really appreciated my time there. But speaking specifically to New Orleans, I would say that New Orleans' new music community has a unique voice, like other cities have their unique voice, but particularly speaking to two things, and I think this also could go to northern and western regions of Louisiana, and that's eclecticism of our artistic voices. And that can be seen at this festival in particular when we have composers like Chris Alford, who is an improviser in the jazz scene and is cross-pollinating with composers who do other things. And the other point is, in general, the environment. We face unique, particular issues with our climate, and I feel like that there is an artistic voice that speaks to that, and that should continue to speak to that. We see crumbling infrastructure, we see loss of land and habitat, and that in particular is, other cities, other places face their own crises in that regard, but I think Southern Louisiana and New Orleans in particular has that challenge, and I think that there is an artistic voice that can speak to those challenges, not necessarily provide solutions, but to present those challenges in an artistic way and seek out ways that we can handle that and create a community around that and help each other in that regard. So that's my perspective on building a new music community in this state in general.
Yeah, sure. I think for me, the perspective that I have about it is that that part of that eclecticism and that unique identity of Louisiana new music comes from how the various different new music personalities, whether they are organizations or individuals, how they find their audience and find their reach and find their place. Because when I think about other places that have new music, that have established things, then it makes it easy to be able to latch onto those things and carry the momentum of what's already there. But for me, like when I moved to New Orleans about 15 years ago now, I was looking for a new music scene, and at the time I didn't feel like it existed. Like I kept on looking, like there wasn't anything with Tulane in a way that was meaningful, that had the kind of experience that I was looking for. And so for me, as someone that was trying to cultivate my own place in that, I said, well, if there isn't a scene here, then I really have no choice but to make one, right? And I think that that ended up being true for Versapel before we merged, because I was my own organization before Versapel New Music and before we had this merger this season. And I know that for Phil and for Carrie, it was the same sort of thing. It's like there was this thing like that brought them to the area for whatever reason, or whether you're from this area or came to the area, and there was a need that needed to be filled, and if you didn't see it elsewhere, you were going to say, oh, well, I'm going to build that. And I think that you can see that too in what Mel has done in Northern, and like what Jeremy wants to bring to the West too. It's like we have to create that for ourselves, and because that comes from different organic places, that helps to boost up that kind of eclecticism and make this really weird hodgepodge community of what we're trying to actually do. So. Yeah, and I think that makes it very unique and something that for me, I lean in on for Louisiana. Like our shows are weird in great ways, right? Like I've been to new music festivals elsewhere, and I'd say that one other festival that I was a part of was weirder than the stuff that we've seen like through here, but everything else has been like maybe one or two kind of out there things, but otherwise it's pretty I don't want to be like whatever, but just a lot more predictable in what you get out of that, which has its own place too, and is important in its own sort of way. But I do have a lot of pride in the degree of eclecticism that the new music scene in this area can offer, and want to be able to present that to the audience more often. I'd ask one more question before I open it up to anybody that might have their own questions, and that would be, what for you personally has been the most gratifying part of your journey as a composer or as a new music cultivator?
For me, as a new music cultivator, currently the most rewarding but also the most challenging aspect has been putting on more hats. So as a composer, growing up, learning the art of composition, I was buried in that and that alone. Right? Learning how to write, getting my music out there, me. Where can I get my music heard? Where can I get my voice heard? How do I get my stuff out there? Now, it's much more than that. It's less selfish. I mean, you have to be selfish as an artist to an extent, but now you put on the hats of how do we get other people's music heard? How do we put on this piece by this composer? How do we get this composer's voice heard? And so that's one hat that's been a challenge, but it's also been quite rewarding. I never thought I would be conducting nearly as much music as I have had to do as a part of Versatile, and that has been just another incredibly engaging and very joyful experience. Challenging because I'm not trained as a conductor, but yes, putting on more hats has been a very, very rewarding experience.
If I can just add on to that really quickly, my own experience, like what you say resonates with me a lot, because the reason that I wanted to put on Batture in the first place, why Batture came to be, was because as I was building my own organization to bring ensembles and performers from across the nation internationally to do things for Tulane University and for other things, I realized that I was in a luxurious position to be able to say, hey, I've been able to get grant money and other funding to be able to bring you here. Can we use this as an opportunity for me to write you a piece of music? So I've been fortunate enough to have some of my own music performed by some of the greatest new music ensembles like in the nation and across the world. And I remember thinking at some point that there were these other composers in Louisiana that were not a part of the university system or just kind of doing their own thing that didn't get that same opportunity. And I said, this is a problem, and how can I solve it? Right? And it was very definitely a Louisiana kind of thing, because I said, I want to find a way to bring more Louisiana composers out of the woodwork from wherever they're hiding and be able to boost them and create that sort of opportunity. So it's very much like that. I'm in a luxurious position. Can I change that somehow and be more giving of the opportunities that I've had and pay that forward in that sort of way? So like that idea of wearing the hat of shifting away from the me to the us, and to really create that has been an incredibly important part of my curation, and is exactly why I wanted to create this festival in the first place. So I appreciate that very much. Jeremy, please.
For me, what has been rewarding is when, at least I think about composing, it's very isolating. It's a very, I'm by myself, either at the piano, or I'm working on the computer, you spend hours working on a piece. But coming to these festivals and, getting to know all of you, it's, joining a sense of community and being, realizing that, you're not by yourself, and that it's like a sense of belonging, and, it's nice to be able to, have these discussions like the round table earlier, and, just seeing them, like everyone's faces, who's going to be at the New Music Value Festival, who's going to be here, and, it's welcoming and encouraging to know that, you're not by yourself. Like you said, coming out of the woodwork, and, that's been really rewarding. It's just seeing the sense of community and, creating these lifelong friendships. And so, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Now,
I would say that it's over the years. I've been doing my thing for 10 years now, and it's changed what I see as most rewarding. I know that the very beginning and pretty much the whole way, getting the right musician's checks is one of the most awesome things I will ever do in my life. I guarantee you. I never felt as good as just writing those checks. You get this much money because you played some awesome stuff. So there's that. And then in recent years, and I think maybe this year in particular, there are times when I think we all find ourselves, it seems really dark when we're looking around the world. And I think when we come here and we get to see what each other are thinking and what they're doing and how they're expressing that, it takes us to a different place. And it reminds us that we're connected, that we're human, that there is this connection that can't be destroyed because it's innate in us. And you see it on people's faces. You know, I mean, you just do. You see it on the composers, the performers. Everybody is like into what's happening, and there's like you said, sometimes it's confusing, and sometimes the confusing part is the best part. Sometimes you're just like so happy to be so confused, and you're not sure why, but you are surrounded by other people that get it, that get why you're happy to be confused. And I think in times like these, that may be the most rewarding thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Well said. I want to be able to open it up if anybody has any specific questions from our lovely audience that they would like to ask either of the whole panel or of anybody individually in the panel, then please feel free to express yourself and raise a hand and stand up and speak loudly. Yes, please, go ahead, Andrew.
And it's such a hard question. It's a great question, but I don't think there's an easy answer. I think that you have to start, if you want to view it as a battle, you have to start the battle before the person opens the screen. I mean, you have to indoctrinate them at an early age. Exposing people to art at an early age, I think, is important, even if it's just in little fits and starts. Is a good way to do that, and not say you can't be on your screen. You can engage 30-second clips and get that endorphin rush. That is one engagement of art, but there's other art. There's slower art. And what can that do to counterbalance that? So I think I think we have to be willing to work with these short attention spans and accept that that's part of our dynamic, but to offer alternatives as well. But there's no easy solution to that. It's a great question.
I've seen, a couple of things. They didn't seem really successful to me, but where they integrated like the cell phone usage, everybody's cell phone. They used a code or whatever, and the phones were actually playing tones or whatever during the piece to engage people. And I mean, that was a novel way. I think there are a lot of novel ways that you can get people into maybe a concert. But I think, as he said, if we want people to go more than 30 seconds, that's going to start, like, that's a battle. That is a battle. It's a battle when you have a kid, like, how do you deal with that? And when we talk to other people about what we do, I think we just have to explain. You gotta slow it down, turn it down. Yeah, there's no easy with that.
I think for me, like, being a collegiate educator for so long and seeing what sort of shifts there have been in that, something that's always been important to me is how can I reach whatever the generation is of the current. And there's always going to be a part of me that's not going to be able to engage with a certain kind of thing, like YouTube Shorts and TikTok. Like, I hate that stuff. Like, it's just not in my personality to think about that in that kind of framework. But I also understand, as somebody that's trying to reach people of which that is their primary medium, that I have to understand at least enough of it to be able to engage on their level and show them. Like, I think a lot of it just comes down to, if I can show them that I'm interested in what matters to them, then that makes them more open to being interested in the stuff that matters to me, right? So it isn't even necessarily about how do we create new music in a way that is a medium that supports the short attention span. It's more like, can we find somebody that we can appreciate the way that they deal with that short attention span, that therefore gets them to pay attention to and have a conversation about, oh, I think about it a different way, and engage in that sort of way. And if you can get them on board with that, then it becomes less about, I want you to engage with what I'm doing, and more about, I want you to engage with me. And if you can get engaged with me, then I can show you something different, and you can show me something different, and it becomes a collaborative kind of dialogue. And I think that for me, like, that's the approach that I have to do that, and to try to then shape in a very natural and organic way how to change somebody's mind or offer a new kind of perspective.
Yeah, I would say we would just need to reach them where they are and use that to our advantage. So if we know, the attention span is small, maybe we program pieces that are a minute long, and we encourage, so that would be like one thing, like finding ways to reach them where they are. And then also, as a community, if we all went out and found one person that we don't know to come to a concert, that would be 50 new people in the audience. So I feel like there's like two parts that we could help kind of augment that issue. If it's a programming thing, like obviously there are pieces that are hours, 2 hours long, but maybe part of a season could be, one concert, it's all miniatures, and that might be something that keeps their attention span, something's ever changing, that could be, like you said, a novel way to kind of reach where they're at. So that would be my solution.
I'll also say that, like, I've seen this like a couple of times at New Music on the Bayou also, that sometimes having new music or experimental things presented in a more installation way so that people can approach it at their own pace and on their own terms, I think is an important avenue to be able to get things. Because a lot of the conversation that I've had with myself and also with Steven, who's out in the audience, has to do with agency and how you deal with composer agency versus performer agency and audience agency, and give avenues of agency to the audience in ways that maybe they don't expect. And if we have, like, using those kind of installations and other things as a means to say, oh, the audience has the agency to experience it on their terms, not on the terms that we define, I think is another way to be able to reach people, because that shows that we're taking into account, like, what they want to actually have happen. And I think that's another avenue for sure. So, are there anybody else have a question, or anybody else that they want to, that has something that they want to ask of any individual or across the whole panel? Sure. Janet. Sorry, can you speak up a little bit, because there's like a lot of extraneous noise. Sorry, the question was cultivating performers to be more into new music, because new music is something that's more accessible, something that's more fun. Is that the gist of it?
I am super into the idea of building a repertoire of music for quote-unquote amateur musicians. In fact, that's something I've been interested in doing in the form of structured improvisations. This is not a new idea. I mean, there's elementary education music teachers who use the boomsticks for music students in elementary school. So, but kind of grafting that onto a contemporary music landscape and incorporating a nice heavy dose of improvisation where it feels like a communal experience is something that I'm all for. So writing pieces for like open instrumentation, where you don't have to play a specific instrument as long as you can get your hands on something and play these rhythms in any order and play whatever you want in this time frame, and it's going to overlap with your neighbor here who's also going to play these rhythms in whatever pitches they want. They don't have to know a lot about music to engage in a communal participatory experience with music. So, and I think there's music out there that does that in various capacities. So, and I like that idea, and I invite the other ideas similar to that. Because I think you're right. I think performing music is a great way of learning about new music. If you're performing new music, you can understand maybe more the whims and the intentions of the creator behind it, and gives you a better understanding of it.
Yeah, I would agree. I've seen instances of that, and I think not a math class, but going into schools and just improving some things that were maybe not straight ahead rhythmic or like drum circle, but a little more esoteric. So I've seen it work in very small segments. I think it's nothing but a good idea. I'm not sure how to, as a person who does X, Y, and Z, I'm not sure how to incorporate that into my regular, daily what I do. But I think it's a worthwhile idea to explore that you've maybe instilled in me for the day.
Go ahead if you got something.
I'm still thinking.
You're still thinking. I'll go ahead first then. I'd say that I think that there is. We were talking before about a degree of stigma relating to new music and kind of an academia kind of wall. I think that there is also this kind of paradigm in new music that equates more value to a piece if it is difficult. And I think that I think that that's something that needs to be shed. Like there's definitely value to music that has that degree of complication and athleticism, and clearly like concertos in more traditional classic music have a lot of power because it allows a soloist to be able to show off like the most that they can do with an instrument, and that creates this concept of because they can do this thing that only a few people in the world can do with their instrument, therefore it has more value. And I think that that's something that needs to be shed, that there's ways to be able to create new music that has just as much value, but is also easier to play and made more accessible to people that are maybe not the top virtuosos in the world. So I think that, like, if you think about, I forget who I was having the conversation with, but they said, if you really want to try to market yourselves as a composer, then what you should really do is start writing like middle school band pieces. Right? Because that's an avenue of which new music doesn't really have like a place aside from just imitating the stuff that's happened before it, right? So if you can find a unique voice in that kind of amateur sort of market, then I think that that's a really good sweet spot, and understand how to be able to relate that. And that's not for you as a composer, then that's one thing, right? But I think that I just like to shed that notion of complication equals more value, equals more, because that's also something that I feel that some composers can just hide behind. And I don't promote that idea. I want everybody to feel like, just because I might decide to do a bunch of chord notes on the page, like how I craft them and the reason why I craft them is still valuable, and I want to make that potentially accessible to any musician, and not just the advanced musician from that sort of way.
Yeah, I definitely agree. When you asked your question, it made me think about the previous question about how do we make it more accessible, and how do we approach bringing new audiences to these concerts. And I feel like that would be a perfect way to kind of meet people where they're at. If we have a concert and say, the concert starts at 7, and then afterwards we're going to do a 30-minute a jam sesh almost, where it's very improv based, but there's someone that's guiding the audience. I feel like that would be a perfect way to meet people with this attention span question, and it would really almost make it more, I guess, participatory versus, you know, audience and composer and performer, that triangle that we talk about very often, it'll maybe blend them a little bit better. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions from the audience? Again, to either any individual on the panel or the entire panel. Yes. Sure. I think that for me, my perspective on it is that there's certain music that is crafted with a particular kind of theoretical concept, right? And that theoretical concept could have a simple or a complicated makeup that makes something on the page look a particular way. And when it has that sort of intention, I'm completely fine with that, because I value what can be gleaned from creating a system, understanding how to intentionally break it and follow it and do all those kind of things to be able to create something that has that degree of complexity and mysticism and how that can translate. I think that sometimes composers that are not so deliberate about that can sometimes create, just as an example, like a particular kind of rhythm on a page that uses this complicated sort of tupleters off the beat or something like that, that to the listener's ear, in the context of that time, doesn't actually mean anything. Like, it could be a quarter note, or it could be like off of a subtuplet or something like that, and the complication around that is there to simply be complicated as opposed to being pushed by a particular intention or a particular vision. And I think that for me, because I come from a place that's more I used to work with a lot more amateur musicians than professional ones, I think that my own experience makes that feel a little bit different, because I worked with a lot of people that took a look at even like stuff on the page that was even easy to me, but was complicated to them. And for them to be able to try to gain accessibility to that, like what we were talking about before, trying to find a more accessible audience, like I say, okay, how can I find a way to be able to reach them and create the same intention of what I'm trying to do, but make it so that they can feel like they're achieving it in a way that is meaningful to them as a performer, and then how they glean that to the audience, right? And I think that there's different levels of that sort of thing that can happen, that I feel like when a composer is just kind of isolated within their own kind of psyche around that can be neglected and ignored. So when I talk about it, I'm really thinking about it like that. It's like what on my page is truly intentional versus what on the page is something that just feels like I'm just putting it there because it feels like the thing, but in reality and to an outside perspective, from a time-based perspective, it holds no actual meaning. It can feel a little navel-gazing to me. That just, I mean, that may be an unpopular opinion, I don't know, but that's just the way I think about it. No, of course not. I'm not talking, so let's be clear too, I'm not talking about well-known composers, right? Like, any of the ones that have carried the weight. It's kind of the same thing, like in an earlier conversation we were talking about percussion schlep logistics, and this idea of how sometimes it can be infuriating as a percussionist if there's a tam-tam in a piece that's only used once at a mezzo piano, and then it's not used for the rest of the piece, right? And I attribute that a lot to like student composers or fresh composers that don't really have like this understanding of how to navigate that in a particular way, but other composers that are very well established in the percussion ensemble field will sometimes do that, but you know that that they are very intentional to be able to say, no, this is exactly what I want, it's exactly right, and I have no qualms with that if I know that it is coming from a very informed place. So no, I'm not trying to criticize anybody that in the new music field that anybody would know or anything like that. I'm just talking about it a little bit more from a different perspective.
What were we talking about?
That was just Ben. I don't know if anybody wanted to add on to any of that sort of thing.
I feel like your initial statement was that being complicated didn't make it better, but it also doesn't make it worse.
Absolutely right.
You know, I mean, it just is what it is.
Yeah.
You know? But I agree that sometimes for a long time it was seen that way. The more complicated, the more intellectual, the higher it was put on a plane. And I just think that's not the case anymore.
Yeah, that was definitely not a disparagement towards complicated music. By far. Yeah. Any other questions from anybody in the audience to the panel? Sure. I have a lot of things to say about this, so I will say nothing right now and make sure that other people have the platform to be able to speak.
Well, I agree. I think that we're missing a lot in a standard educational curriculum, but yeah, maybe this is not the place for that. For sure.
Go ahead.
No, I definitely agree. Just thinking about my own education path and career through just like what I've composed on my own and like trying to fill in the gaps where I can. I would agree that rhythm is always, at least for me, because I wasn't a percussionist. That's not something that I go to first, and so. And essentially, answering the question before, I've always thought like when I'm composing, I've always tried to like make sure that am I writing difficult enough, or is it too much? Or those are definitely questions that I think about when I'm writing. And essentially, you have to come to terms at some point, and you just write what you want to write, and write. Just know that it's okay to not be the most virtuosic rhythmic composer, and it might take a while to get to that point. Maybe some of us are still thinking that, but being open and being aware of that, and just asking questions, and like you said, filling in the gaps with maybe we start introducing different courses earlier on for composers that are studying, and maybe it's attending master classes. Just wherever you can, just kind of fill in the gaps and kind of work with colleagues. That might be something where you could start.
I feel like I'm supposed to say something. I couldn't hear the question very well, so I'll just say something random. It feels like it was a little bit about rhythm and a little bit about not having. Could you yeah, I think I definitely have a lot to say about how we place things in time, but this is definitely not the place for that. I think that definitely the reason that isn't done is because nobody knows how to do it. There's not a lot of books on it. There's some, but there's not a lot. And everybody has really strong opinions about what it should be, what it shouldn't be. And so I think that's why it hasn't really made its way into the curriculum. My feeling on as you said earlier today, one thing you just have to do is you just have to experience a lot of musics. And when you do that, you experience a lot of rhythms, and you start to understand things, And I think that that's immersing yourself in whatever kinds of things speak to you, or how you're going to learn to then generate that type of excitement in terms of time and temporal displacement.
I guess just to bring this to a larger point is, you know, when I got my education, there were lots of blind spots, lots of gaps, and things like that. And I don't know how many educators are out there, but I took the lessons that I learned in my own shortcomings in my education and try to apply them as a teacher, knowing that sometimes it's triage with your students, and that you've got to find some way to plug in this super important concept to you that you know that they probably need to know, that they're not going to have a class for it, and you've got to find ways to shape your curriculum. Sometimes it goes against the flow of the standard curriculum. I never had a music business course. I mean, how valuable would that be? I probably had 4 music history courses that I don't remember one damn thing about. But no music business, no how to create your website, how to get your music on streaming platforms, and that sort of stuff would have been ridiculously critical to my education, and probably shaved off years and years of turmoil trying to figure some of this stuff out on my own. So I try to get that. Yeah, grant writing. Oh my God. Don't give me stuff.
I'll say from a rhythmic perspective, like one of the things, because I am a percussionist and I was deeply involved in the marching band world, there's this exercise that's considered like like a marching band percussionist Bible called duple check patterns, which takes every possible combination of 4/16 notes within like a quarter note beat, and has you go through all possibilities of 4, 3, 2, and 1 notes within each part of it, and learn how to be able to do that with a metronome and also while tapping your foot, right? And that exercise, I discovered, is something that a lot of good and even decent percussionists know and can do, but hardly was anything that was ever prioritizing instruments outside of percussion. So when I was teaching a marching band, and I had a few days of band camp with only the section leaders of the entire band, I made like all of my wind players, I taught them duple check patterns and got them to try to understand those rhythms in a way that they could reference, so that those rhythms could be more accessible to them. And I think that even at that basic level, that's definitely missing in our education, like this idea of how do people really understand pulse and where the beat is supposed to be at a basic kind of level. And I think that that's something that the more that we can educate on those kinds of things, then that's like the ground floor of then being able to get into where we are with more complicated rhythms and more complicated new music, and is another avenue of which we can just create what we were talking about earlier, about having more tools in the toolbox to be able to allow the audience to gain a better understanding of what we're trying to do. So that's my short opinion about that sort of stuff. I think we have time for one more question if we want it before we need to shave it off. Yes? Gail? Yeah.
When it comes to places like this, is there a way, do you guys have to, and if so, is there a way that you guys prepare for the reverb in such a big room like this? Like, does it mess with you? Or like, if you play in an even bigger room or even smaller room? Because I assume that's the point, is you guys play at home, right? And so when you play in something like this, how do you prepare for that? Or do you even need to?
Why are y'all looking at me?
You're the more prolific performer out of like all of us for this kind of thing as a percussionist too, right? So,
I mean, it's a loaded question, which I don't want to give away any secrets or anything. But like, I think the biggest secret is like, this is new music and it's really hard, and something's probably going to go wrong. So like, that's like, you know that up front. What you're wanting to do, this is more fun than anything, because everybody who's here, it's like actually wants to be here and wants to be here to hear the music. And so like, they're excited. They're going to be happy to hear what we have for them. So, it may not be you're talking about the room space, right? Yeah. And it's just, I'm a little worried. There's a lot of echo here. Yeah. But I mean, it's going to be great. Like, y'all are excited to hear my piece, maybe. Or if you're not, then maybe you will be later. Maybe you won't, but you'll pretend to, I think. Anyway, but yeah, I think as a performer, no, this is the apex. You're at a place where people want to hear your stuff.
For me, I'm excited about the space. Lately, the music that I've been writing, I feel like would really do really well in spaces with a lot of reverb. So like when I walked in, I was like, yes. Which might be a different opinion for most people, but I'm excited about it.
There is such thing as too much reverb, but I would rather there be too much reverb than not enough reverb for the music we're playing, and so I invite that challenge, and I think we're more than well equipped to handle those sorts of challenges.
Yeah. I'd say that for me, even though I don't really perform as much as I used to, there is it's a natural instinct for me as somebody that as a performer that is always trying to absorb the bigger picture of what's happening around me to naturally make adjustments to the space in some way, and how I relate to it, like what my role is as a musician relating to an ensemble, or if I'm a soloist, like what I should do with the room, and I don't really think about it. Like it's just a part of how I try to absorb it. When I'm before in the space, like I'm very aware of it, and I try to absorb that. But as a performer, like when I'm in it, like I'm constantly listening and evaluating while I'm playing and trying to see where that fits as best as it can. But that's not always possible, especially with louder percussion. Like you don't know how loud you are immediately versus how loud it's perceived from out there, and that's when like a conductor or somebody in the audience can really help to understand, like in this particular space your balance needs to be a little bit different, or in this particular space you need to come up more, those kind of things. So you have to kind of trust in the community and your own ears at a particular space, and also the people that are in front of you that can give you the information to be able to use the space appropriately.
Yeah, I would say my piece has a snare drum in it. It's going to be too loud. that's a given at this point. So, I mean, I'll do the best I can, but it's going to be too loud. Probably way too loud.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being a part of this panel. Thank you to the panelists for coming in and speaking. Again, for the people that came in late, at the table where Kevin, actually it looks like Will is actually manning that table at the moment, there is like a place for you to be able to scan a QR code for the program for tonight's concert. There is also a fundraiser that we're currently running. It's a very nice, I've been able to secure some matching funds for this, so any donation that you put in will give us double support, which is important if you like the stuff that you hear here today and throughout the entire festival. We do have 2 other events that are going to be happening tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock at Tulane University Dixon Annex Recital Hall, and then tomorrow night at 7:30 at the Domino Lounge is going to be the last concert of this particular festival. If you want more information, then feel free to go up the table. Feel free to go up to the table, scan the QR codes, go to the website, check us out, and then we will be back with you for the concert in roughly 10 to 15 minutes or so. Thanks very much.
So glad you're here for the second concert of the first ever Batture Contemporary Festival. So before we get started, I'd just like to thank a few people. So first of all, this festival would not be possible without our grantors. And so we've been lucky to receive several grants from different organizations like the Louisiana Department of the Arts, the New Orleans Arts Council, and the New Orleans Theater Association for this festival. This also wouldn't be possible without donations from our private donors. So I also want to thank some of our wonderful staff that we've been having schlep around equipment and do various tasks for us. So first of all, we have our production director, Rick Snow, over there. Our fabulous communication and marketing directors, Kevin Ma and Drew Farrar. And I also want to thank our fantastic executive director, Mendel Lee, who's been instrumental in bringing all of this together for this festival. And so we wouldn't be able to do this without him. We just had, this merger between Niente Forte, Mendel's organization, and my organization, Versatile New Music. And so this is I think the best way for us to celebrate presenting this festival by Louisiana composers. So I also want to mention that we have our program online. So when you came in, there's a screen over there where you came in. And so if you scan that, you'll be able to pick up the program on your phone, and you'll be able to see the program notes and the biographies of the various composers. One last thing I'll mention is that we do have a fundraiser going on right now, and we are trying to raise $3,000. And if we meet our goal, we'll have matching grants from a generous donor. So if you're feeling generous, if you have extra money to throw away, we'd love to have it. So I hope you enjoyed the concert, and here's the first concert.
Gotta keep that beat. Gotta keep that beat. What? Gotta keep that beat. Gotta keep that beat. Okay, stop. Gotta keep that beat. Gotta keep that beat. Okay, stop. Gotta keep that beat. Gotta keep that beat. Oh, don't stop. Gotta keep back. Gotta keep back. Okay, stop. Gotta keep back. Gotta keep back. Oh, don't stop. Gotta keep back. Gotta keep back. Okay, stop. If you with that, if you get that, gotta keep that. Keep that beat. Gotta keep that beat. Stop. Da do da. Da do da. Gotta keep that beat. Now stop. Gotta keep that. Keep that. Gotta keep the beat in reverb. Gotta keep that. 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 Gotta get that. Gotta get that. Gotta keep that. Gotta keep that. Gotta keep that. Gotta keep that beat. 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 What? Gotta keep that beat. Gotta keep that beat. Okay, stop. Gotta keep that beat. Gotta keep that beat. Don't stop. Gotta keep that beat. Gotta keep that beat. Don't stop. Gotta keep back. Gotta keep back. Okay, stop. Gotta keep back. Gotta keep back. But don't stop. Gotta keep back. Gotta keep that. Okay, stop. Gotta keep that beat. Gotta keep that beat. Okay, stop. Gotta keep that beat. Gotta keep that beat. Okay, stop.
one this for the band and all the fellas. 2, 3,
studied how to play the guitar. I never learned how to play no piano. I studied how to play the guitar, and I studied under good teachers.
My insurance had already been canceled, and my driver's license was through. So it was always at night, like a werewolf, that I would take the thing out for an honest friend on the coast. So it was always at night, and that's when the strange visiting in the night. You strike your left so far that fear becomes exhilaration. Strange visiting. Strange music, slow it down, slow it down. Unidentified motorcyclist was killed last night, down. Unidentified motorcyclist was killed last night, 35. And look at 2 seconds on the road. There is no honest way to explain it. Because the only people who really know where it is are the ones who have gone over. The edge. Have gone over the edge. The edge. But the edge is still up there. Or maybe it's dead. The association of motorcycles with LSD is no accidental publicity. Here, both a means to an end, to the place of definition.
Hey, little bro. It's me again. Tried calling earlier, but you didn't pick up.
Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message system. 0 0 0 0 0 0 is not available. At the tone, please record your message. When you have finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options.
'm sorry. I miss you again, bro. Probably wherever you are, taking shots with Hunter and lines off of Nancy Sinatra's ass. I miss you, and I love you. I'll call you tomorrow. Tell Nancy you'll be there soon, huh?
While we are doing setup for the final piece, I wanted to say thanks again to everybody for coming. There are two more events that are happening tomorrow afternoon at Tulane University at 2 o'clock, which is the second half of our Call for Scores winners. So you hear more music from various composers that submitted and were given the opportunity to be a part of this. In the evening at 7:30, there is a final show at the Domino Lounge, which is going to be an interesting group collaborative improvisation guided thing that's led by guitarist Chris Hofford, who you just heard, along with other composers. And so, I
appreciate you taking the time. I will say one more time that we as an organization are very committed to the idea of trying to create access for this music and keeping these shows as free and open to the public as possible. But I am also very committed to the idea of compensating all of the hardworking performers and staff for all of their work. So donations that we get from grants and also from individuals who come to our shows and really dig the stuff that we do is very vital to sustain our organization. So if you have it in you to be able to support us and donate, if you text VersaPel to 44-321, then you will contribute to our current matching campaign. We are trying to raise up to $3,000, which will double overall and help us raise $6,000 total. So appreciate your support and for you coming out here and being present for us. Hope you enjoy this last piece and also the rest of this festival this weekend. Thank you.
you.